This segment is brought to you by the National Infantry Museum.
Welcome to this edition of Chattahoochee Connections, where it's always evolving. We're talking about the second level here, up here at the National Infantry Museum with Tony Casadonte from Lumiere Art Galleries from Atlanta, bringing in something here that's so profound from an artist, Mr. Feinstein himself. Harold Feinstein comes out of a 7-year period of his career, and we got it all here, 2 years of it, that will just knock your socks off. And you explained it so well.
Well, you hit the main points. Harold was a very well-known and celebrated photographer, 70-year career. And it's amazing all the different things he did in that 70 years. But he had success very early. And he was in the Museum of Modern Art. Steichen saw his work, and he was in MoMA at the age of 19. So when he gets drafted at 21,
there you go.
He's like, well, okay, I'll go down and I'll talk to them, and I'm sure they'll want to use me as a photographer since I've, already established myself. And they just handed him a rifle and said, that way to the trench. And so he went into the infantry, but what they did allow him to do is carry his camera. And so during that 2-year period, he was a young, gifted photographer, and for 2 years, his subject was his life, which was being a soldier. And in fact, the exhibition is called A Soldier's View, because unlike a lot of photography that you might see, it really is just from the ground up. And we take you through his induction at Fort Kilmer, to his basic training at Fort Dix, New Jersey, the transport to Korea, time in Korea, and then his interaction with the Korean people. Harold just brought his personality along with him, and he just was always out.
You mentioned it to me. You look at his face, Harold.
Yeah.
He's quirky. You can almost his own picture of himself. And you did say, which was interesting too, I mean, here's this Jewish American kid from Coney Island, New York. He brought a certain attitude to this whole display. Tell us about that.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
In fact, there's going to be a video, there's a longer film that was made about Harold, and they actually found some of his fellow soldiers and went back and interviewed him. And it was just really remarkable just seeing their memories of him. And like you said, he was just a kid from Coney Island who never met a stranger, had years worth of sticking his camera in people's faces, so it was very second nature. And one of his cohorts was saying, he looks over and Harold's selling sandwiches. Like everybody's trying to go to bed and he's over there. So he was always working,
hustling.
He was always doing something. And I think you can see that. And he did get into battle, and we have some really interesting photographs, literally straight from the battlefield, not engaged in combat, but right off of it. You don't see any bullets flying. But sadly, he was, well, maybe for him, fortunately, he sustained an injury and had to be medevaced out to the hospital for a while. And then when he came back, he was assigned to be a sign painter in Busan.
Oh, okay.
And so and he just did his 2 years. He was not a career military person. It was the draft. He did his 2 years, and he was back out and got right back into the streets of New York, making his living as a photographer. And was a teacher. He had a very long career. This is all black and white. He was a color pioneer. He was a digital photographer.
So, but we're seeing the early days.
We're just seeing this little window. But he was really at all of his strength and all of his power as a young photographer who had a great eye. And when you come in and see these, they're just kind of regular, but every one of them is just beautifully composed.
Oh, yeah.
And they tell so much. And he talks about, in the film and the clip we'll have here, he talks about how they were all just a bunch of kids. I mean, it was I don't think we realize today the difference between a drafted army and a professional army that we have now. Because these kids,
totally different.
2 or 3 months before. Anyway.
That's it, Tony. This is going to be remarkable. The pictures tell the story. Come over here to the NIM. Check out the flow code.
This segment was brought to you by the National Infantry Museum.